As I was watching the Pokemon Gold and Silver trailers, a sudden realisation came to mind. These games look identical to Red and Blue. No, I'm not just talking graphically, I've done that to the moon and back. I'm talking about the entire setup of these games. It's one thing for a game to fall short graphically, but to fall short in all departments, that wouldn't help these games whatsoever. I'm very concerned about the outcome of these games, and I would like an original, fresh experience when I play these games. But at the moment, all I'm seeing is Red and Blue all over again. Let's compare these insane similarities between Gold and Silver and Red and Blue, so I can show you exactly what I'm talking about, and hopefully open your mind as to why this may be a big issue in the not too distant future. This is the identity crisis of Pokemon Gold and Silver. There's two very specific characters in these games who bear an uncanny resemblance to one another. Let's start with Silver, who is your newest rival in these games. Comparing him to Blue, I just can't believe how similar Game Freak made these characters. Both have canon names that are the same as one of the versions. You can name both of them whatever you like if you want to. Both are similar design-wise with that same smug and cocky face. Both are related to major story characters. Both have the same arrogant and mean persona, and both lack animations besides perhaps walking. I'm hoping that Silver turns out to be a very different character, but everything we've seen so far just reeks of Blue. Gen 2 and Gen 1 are right next to each other as well, which makes these similarities stand out even more. Let's get on to our main characters now, Red and Gold, and the similarities between these two are egregious. Both mainly wear red, both can be named whatever you like, both are wearing caps, both live with their mum and next to the professor. I mean, come on, Game Freak. Do you really think that having Gold wear his cap in a different way was seriously going to make us not notice how these characters are practically the same? We as fans should not be tolerating this laziness. Not only this, but they also take on the exact same evil team. Speaking of, it's the exact same as last generation. Frankly, it will be impossible to tell a different story using the same evil team. Not now, and not any time in the future. I have no doubts that Team Rocket's motivation will be the exact same as last time, to make money through nefarious means and evil deeds. There will probably be an event similar to the Silphco takeover, in which a skyscraper is taken over for the same reason. I can already feel the tears of boredom in my eyes as I play through this exact same story for the second time. The absolute height of laziness. I bet they'll even have Giovanni be the 8th Johto gym leader, just like in Kanto. And on the topic of gyms, gyms were a key part of Red and Blue's story, often having you attempt a challenge or puzzle inside the gym and fighting trainers until you could inevitably fight the gym leader. And wouldn't you know, they brought this back in Gold and Silver, but with a worse twist. You see, in Red and Blue, you had to interact with the gyms themselves to solve a puzzle, like in Lieutenant Surge's gym, where you had to find a secret switch inside one of the bins. But from what we've seen in Gold and Silver, the gyms are way less immersive. I mean, in Faulkner's gym, all you have to do is walk across a giant dollar sign. Perhaps it's a subtle metaphor for how Game Freak has sacrificed creativity for pure monetary gain. Needless to say, this is very disappointing. So as we expected, new Pokemon being added into these games, but I don't really see anything all that special about them. Like, yeah, it's cool that we have them, and I'm sure some will be fan favourites, but let's take a critical look at some of them. Madou just looks to be a blue Pikachu. Its design is something we've seen before, and it doesn't bring anything new to the table. Mareep is also very reminiscent of Pikachu, being only game electric type. Pokemon like Typhlosion, I can see no reason why I'd want it over Charizard, especially seeing as their base stats are the same. Not only are their Pokemon reminiscent of Kanto Pokemon, but some are just flat out new variations. Look at all these baby Pokemon, seriously, who asked for them? They're just unnecessary. Even the new evolutions aren't all that great, like Scizor and Crobat. Golbat and Cypher were fine before, and there was no need for these evolutions, especially seeing how similar they looked to the previous form anyway. The Game Freak seemingly wants these games to be more balanced than the last. They're doing this by introducing new type. But let's be honest, what do they really change? The Dark type is just the Ghost type all over again. It's even super effective against the same things. Seriously, why couldn't Pokemon like Murkrow be Ghost type? Steel type just seems out of place. These are magical creatures using magical abilities. Metal doesn't really sound like the most magical thing. But come on, Game Freak. If you're going to bring in dark type, you may as well add in a more fitting counterpart alongside it, like a light or fairy type, rather than this conspicuous and odd thing. So if you add all this information together, you can easily come to realise that these games are taking the incredibly safe route of replicating what worked in the past games and using it in this new region. Could you seriously imagine doing that? It's such a lazy design philosophy, and I hope that after watching this you'll come to realise that Pokemon Gold and Silver are practically the same as Red and Blue. Okay, if it wasn't plainly obvious, what you just saw right now was a parody of TWIPs' latest video. If you don't know who he is, he's a YouTuber who, ever since Sword and Shield's presence at E3, has been obsessively posting video after video about how awful Pokemon Sword and Shield are. In fact, let's just count them all up real quick. "13 whole videos dedicated to this topic, and with such similar video names as Why Sword and Shield Don't Look So Great and Why Sword and Shield Aren't Acceptable, I find it quite ironic that he'd upload a video about how Sword and Shield's similarities to Sun and Moon make it a worse game. Anyway, I'd just like to take this last bit of time to discuss a couple of his criticisms, the first being...
Now let's get on to Marnie. She may be more different to Gladion than Hop is to How, but I still feel that the resemblance is uncanny.
No, that's wrong!
So what he said about Hop and How, I can agree with, because, well, they are seemingly quite similar. And to an extent, what he said about Marnie and Gladion. I agree that they are both young, dark, broody characters, but the similarities just really end there. Gladion is forced to work with Team Skull due to his unfortunate situation, and was not really popular in the team. Whereas, Marnie has instead attracted a bunch of hooligans towards her, who are attempting to make her the new champion. They have different motivations and may also have different personas as well. Even saying they look similar from a design standpoint is a massive stretch. Just because both seem to have a particular affinity to the colour black does not make them the same character. By your logic of what makes characters similar, we quite easily say that these two characters are copying the Shadow Triad, who are equally dark and gloomy, though of course, we all know that wouldn't be true. Well, so what you said about the gym challenge and the island trial being the same is just wrong?
The new gyms in Sword and Shield have adopted this almost exactly. While the totem Pokemon are gone, the gyms now have challenges, simply named Gym Challenges, in which you're given a new challenge for each gym you enter, just like the island trials.
I played the demo myself and it's just a conventional gym puzzle. It seems like this is just the next step in Gym's evolution, and saying it's the same as the island trial just doesn't hold up. The last thing I'd like to bring up for now is when you said this.
Add all of these points together, and I think it becomes very clear what these games are doing. They're taking the incredibly safe route of replicating everything that worked from Sun and Moon, and just doing it again.
Of course these games are going to keep what worked in the previous ones, you fucking moron. That's what most sequels tend to do. A good example of this would be the classic Sonic series, where Sonic 2 built off Sonic 1 by adding the spin dash and streamlining the levels to improve the game's focus on speed. Sonic 3 built off Sonic 2, once again with more streamlined levels, as well as multiple characters with unique gameplay styles. And following this, Sonic Mania took aspects that worked from all over the series. You can't fault a game for keeping what works, especially if most of your argument for why the game is bad, based on your past videos, revolves around the stuff that isn't there or has been removed. Frankly, TWIP, you've put this game in a lose-lose scenario for yourself, where if something has been removed, then Game Freak is being lazy, and if something is kept from the older games, then Game Freak is being unoriginal. I know one of the things that annoys Sword and Shield's detractors the most is the argument that you wouldn't be complaining if they weren't removing Pokémon, which I tend to agree is something that Game Freak should not have done. But let's be real here, TWIP. Had they not mentioned anything about removing certain Pokemon from Sword and Shield, would you really have uploaded these last 13 repetitive and nitpicky videos? I hardly think so. I'm all for discussing and critiquing these games, but there's only so many times you can say the same thing and call it discussion. My main point when it came to making this video is simply that your criticisms could be leveled to pretty much any entry in the Pokemon franchise. And making 13 consecutive videos about how much you hate these games that haven't even come out yet just makes you look like an obsessive lunatic. I'm sorry, it does. Regardless, thank you for watching the video. I really appreciate hearing what you guys have to say in the comments, seeing as how well, I'm probably going to read them all anyway. That way I think we can foster an actual discussion about the game, rather than repeating the same points 13 times over. See you in the next one, whenever that will be.